Welcome to the Happy Disruptors podcast. If you're a creative thinker with an unconventional approach to your industry, you just might be a happy disruptor. Join your friends at the Great Outdoors Foundation for honest conversations about tackling critical issues like conservation with an uncritical disposition. If you like to smile and get things done, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Happy Disruptors podcast. I'm Hannah Inman. Today, I want to thank Shields for being our sponsor. They have been a great partner for years, and we really appreciate their help and support and their sponsorship on the podcast as well. Thank you to Shields. So I'm very excited about today's guest. Tej Dewan is with us. He was part of Watershed 26 and our Shark Tank. So Tej, I want to turn it over to you to introduce yourself and say a few words.
Sure. Thank you, Hannah. Thanks for having me. My name is Tej Dewan. I'm a resident here in Iowa and largely focused on the entrepreneurial ecosystem. What the ecosystem is a way where innovators and entrepreneurs in our community, especially those focused on high growth startups across multiple industries, are supported. So we engage with entrepreneurs right from their ideation and beginning phases all the way through investments, through angel and venture funds, as well as connecting entrepreneurs to other sources of capital, public and private.
So I'm sure innovation is a word that you hear a lot, and it gets used constantly, but can mean very different things to different people. When you hear the word innovation, what does that actually mean to you?
To me, it is identification of a problem, clearly articulating what the opportunity space around solving that problem is, and then finding sometimes unique and other times historical ideas that can be applied to solving today's problems. So innovation is, at its very core, moving forward by thinking outside the box.
So do you think that there's any big misconceptions about innovation? What do most people usually get wrong in this space?
I think the biggest misconception around innovation is that you have to throw everything you know out and completely disrupt the world to be innovative. It's actually quite the opposite. Just like science, innovation builds upon itself quite frequently, and that requires knowing not just what has worked, but what has not worked, so that we can continue to move forward and not repeat mistakes. Often people think that innovation is all about disruption, throwing away time-tested methods, throwing away history, throwing away experience, when it's almost never that case.
So would it be fair to say that it's oftentimes a smaller disruption within a long chain or a long process?
Disruption can be small or large. What it is almost never, is a unique big bang, if you will. It's often built upon itself. So let's look at an innovation that's been consuming most of our airwaves for the last nearly 4 years, what we call AI. What we generally refer to as AI is large language models that most of us are engaging with via a chat interface. But AI as an innovation started in the 1950s, and the LLMs of today are derived from almost 60 some years of continuous research, continuous development, continuous innovation. Even the large language models that took the public by storm in late 2022 had multiple versions prior to that researchers had been part of. So it's even the largest disruption known to most of us alive today is a series of steps that have been built upon each other. It wasn't just a singular Big Bang that arrived on November 30th of 2022.
Yeah, isn't it? It's the same for people that are often termed overnight successes. It's,
Yes.
decades of building. So,
Yes.
you've worked with hundreds of founders and entrepreneurs over the years. What separates organizations that consistently innovate from those that struggle to adopt?
I think the basic principle taught in any innovative discipline is the concept of recording and learning from failures. And so even the even the successive innovation we just spoke about, the reason innovations are successive or built upon prior steps is because most of those prior steps were a failure of some type. It's often a failure of hypothesis. Like we just um, planned for a future that never occurred,
Right.
or imagined variables that were found later to be irrelevant. So innovation cultures that not only record failures, but then learn from them by being publicly open about them. You see this quite a bit in scientific communities, labs specifically, right? So chemistry, physics, biology are centuries old disciplines where experiments were not only performed but recorded. When a drug worked, when a machine worked or failed, when a mix of chemicals worked or failed. It's the organizations that capture those failures, share those failures, and then learn from those failures that continually succeed. What I often see is in a culture where failure is suppressed or worse, penalized, innovation is nearly certain to die. Because nobody wants to be associated um, with being shamed for trying something.
Right.
What people want is to say that we did A, B, and C. The outcome from that A, B, and C was not what we expected, or worse, it was surprisingly bad. So let's course correct early and tell others why that course correction was necessary, what failed, which variables were used, so that the next person trying something different can avoid those pitfalls and landmines.
So that's such an interesting concept when you apply it to the space of nonprofits, government entities, or when you're trying to solve big societal issues that have multiple stakeholders. I think the startup community, entrepreneurial communities, have the whole fail fast mentality, whereas maybe nonprofits, because of traditional financing models and things like that, it's almost paralysis of planning, right? So how do you nurture that in industry or organizations outside of the startup world?
So I wouldn't say that even the startup community fully embodies fail fast.
Interesting.
We, at least in Iowa, and I'd even say much of the Midwest, have the mentality to keep trying. We don't have enough churn of failed ideas. Certainly not shared knowledge of the failed ideas in our communities. So even though the startup community preaches that idea, claims to live by it, it doesn't actually practice it quite enough. If you were to go look at startups, which are different from small businesses, and we can touch on that in a second.
Yeah.
But we should have a healthy churn of startups at all times. Yet what we see are companies that have persisted for 7, 8, 10 years, trying the same experiment, the same business model, the same technology over and over again, even though the original premise had failed multiple years ago. So in absence of fail fast, we're actually not innovating enough, as a region, as a state, as a city.
So we almost need like a failure convention.
Well, so there is a concept. Now, this is a concept that came out of the startup community that when a company dies, uh, instead of having a funeral for the company, have a wake for the community. Talk about what didn't work. Because the most valuable component out of a failed company is actually the entrepreneurs who came up with the ideas, who took the risk, who had the audacious goals to move forward. In a funeral, those entrepreneurs uh, disappear along with the company. In a wake, those entrepreneurs and their ideas and their work is celebrated so that they can return with a new gusto, with a new energy, and try something different. So that's something we have tried within our community, and sometimes it has worked. But in absence of a failing company, you can't have a wake either.
Well, that's such a wonderful concept. Can you share a time when something didn't go according to plan and what experience taught you about building something meaningful out of that?
Sure, sure. I mean, this is personal experience. So, nearly 16 years ago, a couple of us, Christian Renault and me, we felt that a place, a nexus where entrepreneurs could come together and build their companies together in an incubator would foster new ideas, foster more entrepreneurship, um, and create successes that could build upon each other. What we failed to account for was the critical mass needed for such an entrepreneurial incubator to truly succeed over a long period of time. We had set ourselves an experiment timeline of 3 years. We had funding for 3 years. And within about 18 months, we realized that the critical mass of entrepreneurs just did not exist in central Iowa to make that happen. So in that time frame, we just decided that since this experiment was going to fail in its three, we needed to abort that experiment at the 18-month mark. Many who contributed to that experiment wanted us to continue because the PR value of that experiment was so great that the actual outcomes were or became less important. We chose not to follow that advice. We chose to shut down the experiment. But instead of just closing the doors, we ended up with a series of town halls, a wake of sorts, where we talked about what worked, what didn't work, what needed to persist, what did not. So elements that persisted out of those wake conversations, if you would. So the Plains Angels Angel Investor Network is a derivative of that, still running 13 years later since those timelines. Gravitate Des Moines, which is a co-working space that came out of those late conversations, with a small, 15-ish 100 square foot co-working space, now has multiple locations around the state and continues to grow and prosper. So had we just shuttered the doors, two of these successful entities may have never happened. They might have, but they might not have.
Yeah.
And it, to me, it's amazing when people reach out to me still to this day and say, "Can you share the lessons learned?" And we had published those lessons learned then, and we still continue to share those lessons. And many of the forward thinkers use those lessons learned to not repeat the mistakes, rather change the variables that they would go forward with.
Yeah, that's such a great example. What are you sort of named a few, being able to, not necessarily fail fast, but be open to sharing failures. But what do you see as the biggest barriers preventing organizations or even individuals from becoming more innovative?
I think people expect their idea that they have nurtured in their own heart and mind to be the most successful idea. But ideas, not only are they dime a dozen, they really only matter if the customer of that idea is going to consume or buy into it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times innovation is imagined in the lab and stays in the lab and never actually sees the light of day, never gets the customer test. You have to hit the street. You have to get feedback from the very people who are likely to use your product. In my example earlier, had we started with more than just a handful of town halls we did testing our idea, we might have found that the critical mass of entrepreneurs who could actually use our incubator was tiny.
Yeah.
And in that, we may not have ever expended our time, our money, public money, sponsor monies, all of those things, and just pivoted to something else altogether. So it's really customer input, customer feedback, customer discovery that's so important at those early stages that we shouldn't avoid those.
Yeah, I love that. It's, a million conversations, valuing feedback, and not feeling so precious about your idea to be able to adapt to what the market needs. I love that.
Right.
So our audience includes people that are working to solve some pretty complex natural resource challenges. What lessons from the startup world do you think conservation leaders could borrow when tackling issues like water quality or agricultural sustainability?
I think in both of these domains, like with technology, our desire is to solve the entire problem in one fell swoop. But that old adage from, my goodness, from the 80s when I first became engaged with conservation, that old adage of think globally, start locally, think big, but start small. Accept the small wins, even if they don't solve the entire problem. I think that's still important, and that's the startup community's approach. That take the problem that you can solve, identify all of the variables surrounding it, and go after that problem. Don't expect that the entire world will move with you.
Right.
It'll move when the critical trigger point happens. But until it happens, the world's not going to move because people are too absorbed in their own problems, their own priorities to listen to the truly large, great problems. We look at from water perspective. We look at the Colorado River Basin and how it affects 4 states, or at least 4 states. It affects a lot more. It affects multiple countries. But the people who are beginning to see the impact of the Colorado River and the lakes are the ones who are in the most immediate affected area, Lake Mead, watershed. If they were to start addressing the problem first, both upstream, colloquially and literally, the problem resolution will start to migrate and start to move. It's a lot like what we did in the Des Moines area, where now the discussion, even in social media, is about individuals installing reverse osmosis. Mm-hmm. It's the wrong solution to the big problem, but what it's doing, as we individually install water filters, is everybody is accepting that there is a problem. It's through that acceptance that a larger solution is likely to come about. But simply going after solving the biggest problem is a battle that no one entity, no one provider can win. It has to create a groundswell to address that larger problem, especially one that has grown over not just a handful of months, but years and decades.
Yeah, it's decades of a system being built to solve another issue. And, out of that, we have other things that we have to address now, which leads to more innovation, right? Are you
Yeah.
seeing any opportunity for disruption or any promising innovation happening in the conservation or water space at this moment?
A handful, a small handful. So I think the startup I know of, only because I've seen the founder present, is Pani Clean out of University of Iowa, Iowa City region. They are focused on really small converters. That's the only word that's coming to my mind, of nitrates in water to produce green ammonia.
Oh,
Uh, Now, it doesn't solve our fertilizer problem. It doesn't solve the problem of plastic tiles, which create rapid absorption of nitrates into the groundwater source compared to what the clay tiles used to decades ago. But it is an experiment that is successfully extracting nitrates and producing ammonia. It's going to be 100 of those kinds of solutions that ultimately address our macro problem. We just haven't discovered all of them yet. And I'm guessing many of the researchers have not publicly disclosed, or have only privately disclosed to very small groups what they've figured out.
when you talked about the reverse osmosis system and sort of the acceptance that we have a problem to solve, do you think that is the critical mass to start producing some of the more innovation, like the company out of Iowa City, or do you think that there still needs to be more that happens in that space for innovation to match the scale of what we have before us?
More has to happen. I think about my RO unit and a dinner party I had at our house recently, where the others in attendance don't have an RO unit installed for their water filter. But in that conversation, as I was talking about what I had to do, I asked them if they had tested their water, or were they just um, accepting what was out there, and none of them had. So I pulled out extra test strips and handed them out. I said, "Go take these, test your own, figure
Yeah.
out for yourself if you have a problem. Don't take anybody else's word for it." But in doing so, my attempt was to educate. Once somebody's educated, they are likely to consider action. It's those series of small steps that are likely to create the eventual waterfall that we all need to act on a bigger problem.
Outside of, scaling innovation, are there other enabling conditions that need to exist to start, fueling more innovation in this space?
I think we have to be accepting of basic science as a society, not just within the state, but as a country. We have started to demonize science in ways that are counterproductive, not just to us as individuals, but to us as a state and a nation. Each one of us is using hundreds of products of science and scientific methods, including the very computer or phone that this podcast is being played on.
Right.
Demonizing science because it doesn't fit our personal narrative is only hurting ourselves. So we have to be more accepting. We have to be more open-minded to seeing what those with certain expertise are doing within and around our communities. I routinely, I'm not a climatologist. I'm not in conservation as a day-to-day. I'm employed in conservation on a day-to-day basis, but I'm a recipient of the work. I benefit from the work of the conservationists, the scientists, the climatologists who are working in this space. So it behooves me to read what Chris or David Thorson or Chris Jones or David Thorson and others are saying and writing and educating us about. We have to be more accepting if we are to be productive members of the society.
Certainly. So our podcast is called The Happy Disruptors. Who's someone that's disrupted your thinking over the years, and what did they teach you?
I think the crazy thing is it's not just one person. I can go back to my very first computer science class at Central College in Pella, where we were being taught computer science. We were being taught programming, and the professor teaching was a robotics professor, then doing research in AI, of all things, 1987.
At Central.
And he asked us to play computer. What does that mean? He asked us to say, you as humans can think on multivariable fields at the same time. You can think in multiple dimensions, but a computer thinks in one dimension, at least at that time. So play computer. Bring yourself down to the most basic element and then start building from there. That was a representation of the scientific method. Similarly, a professor in biology who guided us to start a club called SCATE, Students Concerned About the Environment. He pushed that think globally, act locally mindset on us to say, you're trying to solve, at that time the problem was acid rain, as we called it, right?
Right.
Instead of looking at that larger problem, which we as freshman students couldn't solve, think about what we could. And even on our tiny campus in Pella, we started with a simple paper recycling program. Crazy thing, 39 years later, still there. The club and the program. So those are Alan Copsey and Steve Rattring are the two guys I would say are the earliest memory I have of disruptors. They changed how we thought or even planned things.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love the enduringness of skate. So thank you for that. It's been wonderful speaking with you today. Thank you for all that you do for the state and for being part of Watershed 26, Athene Watershed 26. Any final thoughts to share before we conclude today's podcast?
I would just say that none of these domains work in isolation. So part of the reason I wanted to participate in the Athene Watershed last month, or the reason I will participate in the World Food Prize event later this year, and the startup events continued, is because we learned from crossing domains. Mm-hmm. So just like techies moved into the water space or into the food space, I invite those in the water and food spaces to come sit in on the AI or the medicine or other spaces, because it's through the cross-contamination of each other's ideas is how we learn how to move forward. So don't just stay in your domain, go beyond. We will, so Diana and I, who were on that watershed panel, we host an Iowa Angel Investor Summit in November, during which we bring in competing ideas from competing disciplines. So Pani Clean was introduced to us when that researcher applied to us from University of Iowa, and she presented at last year's Angel Summit, bookended by pure technology and insurance, completely unrelated domains. But it's through unrelated domains is how we learn. So I would invite those listening to cross domains to learn from the others.
Yeah, and we're excited about that event. We're certainly going to be attending and learning from all the innovators there. So we appreciate that. Thank you again for being with us today, and thank you to all of our listeners. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we can't wait to see you again. Thank you.